Welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. I'm Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. To find out more about the X Zone Broadcast Network, where you can listen to us 24/7, 365 with our compliments, visit www.xzbn.net, and that is for all the X Zone Broadcast Network programming, including, Kevin Randall's A Different Perspective, Larry Lawson's Paranormal Stakeout, Gwilda Wiyaka, Mission Evolution, Sharon Lynn Wyeth, Know the Name, Know the Genius in You, just to name a few of them. And of course, Dr. Bernie Beitman's Connecting with Coincidence. www.xzbn.net. And for the program listing for the X Zone TV channel on Simul TV, by the way, we're channel number 21, www.simultv.com. My guest this hour, Exonation, is a gentleman we've had the pleasure of having on before. Mack Maloney is his name. He grew up in Dorchester section of Boston and was taught to read and write by the nuns at St. Anne's School. His father was a veteran of World War II, and he used to read military books all the time. As a child, Mack started reading them too. Along with a lot of science fiction, he received a Bachelor of Science in Journalism and a graduate degree in filmmaking from Emerson College. He was a sports reporter for 2 years after college before joining corporate America as a publicist for General Electric Company. Mack started writing books in 1984 and has been doing it full-time since 1987, penning over 30 books. Joining me now from the city of the World Series winners, Boston, is our guest this hour, Mack Maloney. And Mack, welcome back to the X Zone, and congratulations to all the Boston Red Sox fans.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you.
Mack, are you still doing your show?
Yes, right. We do our radio show, Mack Maloney's Military Exiles show, once a week.
Excellent, because I'm trying to get as many listeners to listen to your show as possible, because
thank you.
You guys are great. I'll tell you that. I listened to a couple of your shows, and it was really well done.
Oh, okay. You sure as us?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Just
don't you know?
Just checking.
So tell me, how did you celebrate the win of the World Series?
Well, it was. We live about a half hour north of Boston, and Boston is a very small city. People might think it might be like New York or a bigger city, but it is. It's very small. All the streets are very tiny, and because it's an old city, and you just know when you go down there, any kind of anything, even just a regular baseball game, the traffic is tied up for hours. There was about 3 million people in there today, and wow. I said, no, I'll just watch it on TV. So I had a beer with lunch, and that was it.
It's funny how things turn in this world of ours. It was just a few years ago when Boston had that horrific Boston Marathon bombing, and yep. Boston was in the news, in the forefront, and of course everyone's heart went out to all the Bostonians and the people who were involved, casualties of that horrific act. And to see the people celebrating in the streets because of the win of the World Series, man, right. that was great.
Right.
That was
and that
great.
Was a very unlikely World Series win, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
I don't want to go out too far down baseball land, but, they won that World Series with a .70 batting average. I mean, that's terrible. If you had .7, if you had a 170 batting average during a regular season, you'd be benched. But they got key hits that year. It was almost like it was meant to be.
And anyway, congratulations to all the Boston fans. It was a great series. I thoroughly enjoyed watching it.
Yes,
let me ask you something. What was the Gallipoli disappearance that I'm reading about here?
Right. Okay. Well, that's. I think it's the first story in my new book, Mack Maloney's Haunted Universe. And what it was is it's actually, I think, pronounced Gallipoli. It's a place in Turkey. During World War I, British, Australian, and New Zealand troops were part of an invasion of Turkey. Turkey was on Germany's side, so the British thought that they could get a foothold in Turkey. So they invaded Gallipoli in Turkey, and they were just mowed down. It was just one of the most horrific things in World War I, which had a many number of horrific things. As I say, lots of Commonwealth soldiers actually killed. There's a movie called Gallipoli that Mel Gibson stars in, and it really is graphic on how bad this battle was. Anyway, there was this 100-man company from Britain called the Sandringhams, and they were actually made up of servants and people who worked on the Sandringham estates in the United Kingdom. They actually formed their own military unit, went through training, and now they're over. And it's Gallipoli, and they were sent forward just into the meat grinder. And the last anyone saw, now there's 100 people walking into smoke. They never came out the other side. They had periodic ceasefires so people could go out and collect their dead. Never found anyone from this company. No one in the 100-man company was ever found. No uniforms, no weapons, no remains, nothing.
It's as if they walked into another dimension or place in space and time.
Something. And even the person who was the, let's say, commander-in-chief of British forces at that time, someone asked him about it, and he says, we don't know. It was a very unexplainable thing, or he had some kind of quote like that. And, who knows? It's just odd that all 100, wherever they went together type thing.
Is this the only story of a disappearance of soldiers that over the years you came across?
No, there's actually lots of them. World War I especially, it was just a horrible, war. Just people, the trench warfare was just awful. It's just awful. There's no other way to describe it. Just tens of thousands of soldiers dying every day for it seemed like no reason. But there was a battle in a small town in Belgium that I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name. And but a very small town, but this is where the Germans' trench was and where the British trench was. This is August of 1917, and it was the rainiest summer they had ever had. They'd had in like hundreds of years in France, wouldn't you know it, right in the middle of the war, and it created so much mud and so much dirt had been churned up by artillery shells. They counted 1 million artillery craters just within 2 or 3 miles of this place. That's how heavily bombarded it was. Churns up. The dirt gets wet, it becomes mud, and it becomes mud that's like, in some cases 10, 12 feet, down. Wow. And people would get stuck in it. They'd get sucked under, never to be seen again. And this went on for 4 or 5 months. And when the battle was over, more than 500,000 people on both sides were killed or wounded, and almost 100,000 of the soldiers who died were never identified, never seen. So somewhere in the ground there is just a lot of human remains. It's as crazy as it sounds.
The name of your new book, I believe, is Mack Maloney's Haunted Universe?
Right.
And where is it available, Mack?
The easiest place is available everywhere, but the easiest place is to go to Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com.
I just want to make sure our listeners get that, because, Christmas is coming pretty soon, as well as Remembrance Day. And I really don't think the youth of today, Mac, realize the sacrifice that men and women over the years in the different wars and conflicts in modern time, the sacrifices were great.
Right.
And
it's I think it's almost impossible for people to appreciate, what people did, especially in World War II. My father was a veteran of World War II, and when I was growing up, I knew a lot of, people, uncles and neighbors and people like that who were in World War II. They were kids, back then, and when the war came around. But and I don't know, they came home and it was no big deal. What they came home to was like the GI Bill. A lot of them went to college and so on. That was the post-war era in
Right.
the United States, but. And then there was prosperity and so on. But I don't know, how do you repay people in the United States and Canada and England for what they did? Supposing if they didn't do it, what would have happened? Where would we be?
God bless them all. And whenever we go out, my wife and I've taught my children this, and they're teaching our grandchildren. When you see a member of the armed forces in uniform, or even if they're not in uniform, but they're in the armed forces, go over and say thank you.
Yeah, I'll buy him a drink.
Exactly. Like I'm a member of the Canadian Legion. All my uncles were in World War II, and when I see the youth of today, and it's a totally different world, and they have no idea.
Right. Things have changed. That's the
Yeah,
thing. It's in a way, it's kind of interesting because the wars we fight these days are not the wars that we fought World
sure.
War II.
Mac, I
Certainly,
hate to do this to you, buddy, but being in the radio business yourself, you know that these breaks are hard and we have to
Oh
take
yeah.
them. So, Mack Maloney's my special guest. He's the author of a new book, Mack Maloney's Haunted Universe. His website is mackmaloney.com, and his books are available on amazon.com. I'm Rob McConnell. Mac and I return on the other side of this break. Don't go away. And to all the members of the military who are listening to the show right now, thank you for your service. We'll be back. Don't go away. My guest this hour is Mack Maloney. His website is mackmaloney.com. Mack has a new book out. It's entitled Mack Maloney's Haunted Universe, and it's available on amazon.com. And because we don't do this enough, I'm going to do it again. To all the members of the military serving now, or to the veterans who are listening, thank you for your service. It's because of your sacrifices and your service that we live in the democratic and free world that we do today. And
And as we were saying before the break,
Yeah.
I don't think people, they're not reminded enough of something like that. And when time goes by and, things kind of get, foggy and, as the years go by,
True.
let's say. But, there are other countries, I'm talking about America right now, there are other countries, certainly, even the Russians, who really honor their veterans. I mean, I don't know why we don't do it in the United States. So, but we should.
Well, here in Canada, what we do is we have Remembrance Day or Armistice Day.
Mhm.
And at 11 o'clock, at 11, we have 2 minutes of silence.
Mm-hmm.
And in every city across Canada, there is a monument to remind us how lucky we are and how thankful we should be and are to the military and those who have fought in the conflicts as well as in the world wars.
Yep.
And
I agree with you 100%.
it's something that I hope, like, I can instill it in my children. I can instill it and work with my children to instill it in their children. And I think that this is very important, that every member of society realize the sacrifices that have been made in order to give them the democracy and the freedoms that 9 times out of 10 they take for granted.
Right. Yeah, because they've grown up. I mean, we've had several generations now grow up in time of relative peace,
Yeah.
and they don't realize. Every once in a while you run into someone. Like my wife's father was in World War II. In fact, he was the youngest Marine on the Battle of Okinawa. He
Wow.
was 15 years old when he went into the Pacific War. But anyway, he's just someone who fought the battle, came home, became an English teacher, was an English teacher for 30 years, raised a family of 5, and just kind of like went about his business, But when he told me the things that he saw and what happened and how he kind of played a part in this major part of history, it's almost overwhelming. You almost had to experience it yourself, I think, to
Yeah.
really appreciate it.
My wife and I, we had to go to Hawaii to do a TV production. So my wife and I, when we were off the set and away from the production, we actually went over to Honolulu, and we went to Pearl Harbor.
Sure.
And I must tell you something. Now, I consider myself to be a seasoned ex-cop. I've seen a lot, and I've done a lot. But being there was a feeling that I'll never forget.
Yeah, emotional. Yep.
Very,
Yeah.
very emotional.
And any ship that goes in and out of that Pearl Harbor, they have the crew come out and stand on deck and salute the remains of the
Yeah.
USS Arizona. Still do it to this day. There's still sailors, who are entombed down in at the bottom of
Yeah.
Pearl Harbor, and the USS Arizona is still there.
Were you in the military, Mac?
No, I wasn't. My family. I'm from a military family,
Yeah.
but I'm not. As I said, my father was in World War II.
Right.
I had uncles who were in the Korean War. My brother was in the Vietnam War. And the people we do the radio show with, they're both one's a Air Force veteran, one's a Navy veteran. I'm surrounded by veterans, but I don't think I would have been military material, to tell you the truth.
My favorite cousin, when I was growing up, was so proud he joined the U.S. Marines, and just as he was landing in Vietnam, his what are they called? What are those ships? Those barges, landing barge?
Yeah, sure. Yep.
Yeah, was going ashore, and before he even set foot on the soil, he was dead.
Dead?
Dead. Yeah.
Wow. What happened? You mean he was shot dead?
Yeah, he was shot.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah,
Oh,
and anyway, I guess what I'm trying to get across to the listeners tonight, Mac, and I know that this is what you do with your show, is that the military plays a very important part, and once for our freedom and democracy.
Mm-hmm. It's not just our freedom too. This is what another thing that's kind of lost in the translation a little bit. Just the NATO powers, let's say.
Oh yeah.
They protect the entire world, and for the most part, and it's kind of, as I say, it's kind of lost in all the noise that happens every day. But someone's always going to be creating mischief somewhere.
Of course.
And you have to go, and you have to, in certain times you have to, not all the time, but in certain times you have a choice: do nothing, or you have to kind of stand up for what's right. And I mean, some people who are alive today, they saw that happen in the Gulf War. For instance, the first Gulf War was something that you had to really go and say, okay, enough's enough. The Falkland Islands War, as stupid as it was, you're making a point. You just can't invade someone else's island.
That's right.
I mean, you got to go down and do something about it.
But let me ask you this, Mac, and I'm sorry for interrupting you. But when we look at what's happening at the southern border of the United States with these thousands and thousands of people who are telling the U.S. government, we're coming in, you're not going to stop us.
Well, I'll tell you my thoughts on that.
I'd appreciate that, and I respect that.
Overall, long range, okay, is the way that you deal with that kind of problem is that you make it illegal for the large food corporations and different corporations that ring the southern border of our country from hiring people who are illegal. If it's against the law to hire someone who's illegal, then illegals won't come to this country looking for jobs.
But they're looking for more than that, and they know that as soon as they get lost in the system, or if they're given asylum, they're going to get they're going to
some
have
will, some will, but the majority of them are here for financial reasons,
right.
And things are just horrible down in those countries, and they always are. Honduras and down there, it's just always kind of chaotic.
Yep, been there.
Right? But if you take away the incentive. Then they won't come in, and then the added benefit of that is, at least to Americans, is that then Americans will do those jobs and get paid, a decent wage. That's what it's all about. It's hiring cheap labor. That's what a vast majority of the immigrant quote unquote problem is about. So do away with that, and I think the problem goes away.
How do you feel about the military going down there?
Well, I really, really dislike discussing politics, but I'll tell you this: the military isn't going down there. It's not going to happen. You can't get 15,000 people down there in a week, even though it seems like you should be able to. We're in a political season here in the United States. The elections are next week,
right?
And everything you see on TV just about has some kind of a political angle to it, And frankly, I don't care. I don't like it discussing politics or religion with anyone because you never change anyone's
Sure.
mind.
Well,
if you know what I
let's
mean,
put that to rest and call a spade a spade. Okay? Boston won the World Series.
That's true.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go. Mac, I was talking to a guest earlier this hour, earlier tonight, I should say, and I knew you were coming on, and I deliberately would like to ask you this question. Is it possible for the military to actually have interaction with extraterrestrials without the information getting out anywhere, even to the President of the United States?
No, 100% no. And we've talked about this before. I know that there's no evidence. Once again, if you kind of look past the noise, there's no evidence at all that the U.S. military knows what UFOs are. Now, they have more information that they exist because we know they have film, videotape, you name it, photographs. But I don't believe that they know any more about where UFOs come from than we do.
Why then do you think there are those people out there who are convinced, like they will put their hand in fire and say, listen, I talked to a general and this general talked to me in confidence and he told me that there was this crash and that we are the, reverse engineering has produced fiber optic, this, that, and the other thing.
Well, where is it? That's the other thing too, is that fiber optic, for instance, by saying that fiber optic was, the result of reverse engineering UFO, what you're doing, you're dissing the people who actually invented fiber optics, probably someone at AT&T or something. That's all human engineered, let's say. And you can point to anything and say, well, we got that from the aliens. But once again, I probably said this on your show too, is that we launched the space shuttle here in the United States for more than 25 years. All right, it's the most complicated piece of machinery ever in the history of man. It was like launching a dump truck into orbit. And we had some, catastrophes. It cost a lot of money. And what did it really do but just kind of ride around up there? Would we go through all that if we had the secret of anti-gravity from some UFO found in Roswell in 1947?
According to me, no.
No, there's no way. Because, government doesn't work like that.
Max, stand by, my friend. I hate to do this to you, but we have to take our break at the bottom of the hour for the news. And Exo Nation, Mac and I will be back on the other side of this break. www.mackmaloney.com. And Mac, where can they find out about your radio show?
Well, just go to MackMaloney.com, and there's the schedule. We're on 7 different networks, including the Armed Forces Radio Network. Excellent. But go to MackMaloney.com and see our schedule.
All right, buddy, stand by. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away. Exonation, Mack Maloney is our special guest this hour, www.mackmaloney.com. He's the author of a new book out entitled Mack Maloney's Haunted Universe, and it's available on Amazon.com. And he's also the host of Mack Maloney's Military X-Files radio show. He's authored more than 40 books, including UFOs in Wartime, What They Didn't Want You to Know, and Beyond Area 51. Plus the best-selling Wingman Military Adventure series. And once again, his website is mackmaloney.com. As always, Mac, great having you on the show. And during the break with the news, you and I were discussing a story about UFOs. And as you were telling the story to me, I said, can we tell it on air? And you said, sure. So please, go ahead. I'm sure our listeners would love it.
Well, a couple actually. On our show, we know a number of people. We have this small network of people who have worked for the U.S. military or have worked for the FBI or the CIA or any other three-letter agency. So one of them who works as a contractor to one of the agencies, what he would do every year is go down to D.C. and they would have these kind of workshops, combined workshops where there'd be someone from the State Department, from the Pentagon, from NASA, from the Justice Department, and so on. And they would give them a problem, and for the next 3 days they would discuss this problem. And the problem would usually be, if an ocean liner was hijacked, if an airplane was forced to land at JFK and had radicals and bombs on it, or just things that are kind of real life scenarios, let's say. Okay. But the last time he went down, well, actually this was last summer now, everything was just as it always was, but the scenario was what would you do if an extraterrestrial craft crashed in the desert somewhere? And everyone had to go away and work up a presentation and then present it to the group. That's what they would do. But he was shocked that the problem this time had to do with a UFO. He just couldn't believe it.
What do you know about these alleged bases throughout the United States, these underground bases? Are they real? And if they are, in my opinion, they would be so that any overhead satellite would not be able to take pictures of what is going on. But
sure.
People within the UFO community are convinced that this is where the governments are maintaining the extraterrestrials that are on this planet. In fact, I had a guest on who said there's more than 61 species of ETs that the government knows about.
Well, again, I don't want to be the bucket of ice water.
No, I usually am. Don't worry about it.
But none of that is true. These things don't exist, and once again, we are not in contact with aliens, ETs, or anything in a way that's going to affect us. When you hear about SETI and these people seeing signals, receiving signals from way, way, way out in the galaxy, that's the kind of stuff that I believe is where we're going to find out for the first time that we're not alone in the universe.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that UFOs, don't come from, some other planet, some other galaxy, who knows where. But there's a good chance that they're from, let's say another dimension, another time. We've talked about it before. I think they might be time tourists. They might be from our own future, coming back to see history being made. There's there's dozens of explanations. There's probably an infinite number of explanations of what they could be from, and it's probably something we just can't understand. But they're here, they're real, but there's no way that there are 60,000 aliens living in a hole somewhere. Where would you put the dirt? How would you feed them?
Well,
how would you support a place like that? And all secret these days. Everyone blabs about everything. There's no way you could keep a secret like that.
I can't understand how they truly believe that a secret of this magnitude could be kept from the President of the United States.
Right. And now, the President of the United States doesn't necessarily get all top secrets. And there's actually a story in the book, Mack Maloney's Haunted Universe, about there was a ship built by the CIA back in the early 70s called the Glomar Explorer. And what it was, Howard Hughes built the ship. It looked like something that went and looked for oil pockets in the deep sea in the Pacific. But really what it was is it had a gigantic claw, and it's hidden away. And what they did is they found a Russian submarine that had sunk, and they had sent the claw down to pick up the submarine, hoping they would get the missiles, for instance, the nuclear reactor, so they would know what the Russians were up to. This is early 70s now. Nixon did a tour of the San Diego Navy base. And he said, hey, look at that ship. I'd like to tour that. And the CIA said no. They wouldn't even give him. He didn't have clearance enough to, tour the CIA ship. Okay, so that was one secret he did not know. They do say that when presidents take over, that they're handed an envelope or they're given a briefing with 2 or 3 things, that would just like blow your mind is told to them. But I just, whether they knew about UFOs and not telling the president, who knows. If disclosure was going to happen, it's going to happen with the guy who's in the White House right now, though, because he can't keep a secret. It's obvious.
Double-edged sword on that one, there, isn't it? In your book, you talk about England's Phantom Town. Can you tell us about that?
There's, it's just one of these, crazy stories where we have no explanation for it. But there was actually a place called Ogleton in West Lancashire, part of England. And it was a British town. It was a typical British town. It had its own postal code, had its own post office. It appeared on Google Maps. It had want ads in the newspaper for new jobs and so on, real estate. It had a local dating service and so on and so forth. But it didn't exist. If you went to the coordinates that it was given, on maps or on Google Maps, you'd go there and it was just an empty field. No one knows why this happened. No one knows who set it up. It seems like maybe some, who knows, British intelligence might have needed to create a virtual town for some reason. No one knows really. Someone said, we actually asked one of these friends of ours who appear on the radio show every once in a while, about this, and his response was, what better place for a government to hide secrets than a town that never existed, right? Wow. And we're going, yeah, I guess so, but but it's gone now. It's not on Google Maps anymore. But yeah, this phantom town existed for 4 or 5 years.
In your book, Mack Maloney's Haunted Universe, which is available on Amazon.com, as I've been saying throughout this hour, what is the strangest ghost plane story that you have in your book?
Well, this really is a strange one, and I had never heard about this before, but this is like one of the stories in the book that really kind of creeps me out in a way. The setting is that there's a place called the John Wayne Airport in Orange County, California, and that's a very, very ritzy part of the LA region of California. Okay. So it's so ritzy that everyone has private jets, but you can't take off before 8 a.m. on a Sunday, and you can't land after a certain time at night because the noise restrictions, because everyone that lives around this airport is really rich, right? So on a Sunday morning, one of these small racing airplanes all of a sudden shows up over this airport, and it starts to do aerobatic maneuvers and so on, and making a lot of noise, and it's before 8 a.m. So people actually see the number on the side of it, and they report it to the tower. And then what happens is routinely the tower then issues a noise violation notice to the owner of the airplane, and that's what they did. Their computer did. But it turns out that the owner of the airplane was a guy named Deke Slayton, who was one of the original 7 Mercury astronauts for NASA. Okay, yeah. He had just passed away 5 hours before.
Oh my gosh!
And the plane, which he sold to a collector, was in its garage in Las Vegas. And the owner, filed an affidavit saying this plane has never left the hangar since I've bought it. Yet dozens of people saw this thing, flying around enough so they took down the number. And they got a violation notice, and no one's ever really explained, what happened.
Wasn't Deke Slayton also the project manager for Apollo 13?
Right. He was, they were all involved. That's the interesting thing about the astronauts is that, some of them would go up, but others, they were actually be involved. They'd be controllers or whatever. They were engineers. They were designers, so they really got the most that they could out of the astronauts. But he was also the guy he was in command of the 1975, believe it or not, there was a Apollo capsule was shot into space, and then a Russian Soyuz capsule was shot into space, and they actually joined and they linked up in 1975, which was interesting because we weren't really in that good a relationship with them at the time. They called it Glasnost. But, we did it. We did it way back then.
And look how far we've come.
Right. And not far at all. We've taken a few steps back, frankly.
What about ghost ships?
Yeah, my favorite ghost ship story is it has to do with, and we have stories about ocean liners disappearing and all different kinds of ships, but this one just for some reason, it sticks with me. And it was just a fishing ship, a fishing vessel, small boat out of Taiwan called the High Six. And it would usually fish off of Australia.
All right, why don't we do this? We've got to come up to our final break, and I'm sorry about this.
Okay, that's fine.
But Mack, stand by, buddy. Great having you with us. And Exonation, if you'd like to find out more about Mack Maloney, our guest this hour, visit his website, mackmaloney.com. And if you'd like to get a copy of Mack's newest book entitled Mack Maloney's Haunted Universe, visit amazon.com. Mack and I will return on the other side of this break as we wrap up this hour here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. Exonation, Mack Maloney is our special guest this hour. His website is mackmaloney.com, and Mack is the author of a new book that's available through Amazon.com entitled Mack Maloney's Haunted Universe. And Mack is the host of Mack Maloney's Military X-Files radio show, and to listen to Mack's radio show and to find out its broadcast schedule, visit mackmaloney.com. First of all, Mack, always great having you on the show. Thank you so much for sharing with us tonight. Congratulations on a great book. During the break, my producer shot me over a note. He wanted to know, after you tell us about the ship that disappeared in the Taiwanese ship that kind of disappeared, the fishing ship, about the Bermuda Triangle.
Okay. The ship that disappeared, what was interesting about it was, people would see them all the time, and ships would see they always radio each other just as a courtesy. Well, no one was answering the radio on this fishing ship called the High Six. So finally, this other fishing ship came up, tied up to them, came aboard, couldn't find the crew. Just gone, like so many ships at sea. For some reason, their crews are gone, nothing's wrong with the ship. But what was interesting about this was that a cell phone belonging to the ship's engineer kept getting calls for like a week later, and then they stopped as well. And no one ever found out what happened to the crew or, who was making the calls on the cell phone.
Now, where was this ship found? Was it found in the Bermuda Triangle or one of the other famed triangles?
No, this was it was off the west coast of Australia. This happened, but with the Bermuda Triangle, what's interesting about the Bermuda Triangle is that, and once again, not to go back to reference the new book, but we do have a story in there about this. The U.S. Navy's Area 51 is located in the middle of the Bermuda Triangle, and as crazy as that sounds, it's true. It's called Autek. It's on one of the Bahamian Islands. It's right in the middle of the Bermuda Triangle. It's where the U.S. Navy, now they do this for sure because there's a trench there between the Bahamas and the coast of Florida that's very deep from the Gulf Stream, rolling by there for millions of years. And they test new equipment on the nuclear submarines off of this island. There's no doubt about it. It's called Andrews Island. But they also have a lot of radar gear and sonar gear there. The sonar gear is so good it can hear Russian Bear bombers over Norway. This is the sonar gear. Can hear Russian Bear bombers over Norway. Okay, that's how sensitive it is. Yet people see USOs down there all the time. They see UFOs down there all the time. And the Navy says, we never see any of this stuff. So it puts them in the position, well, is this stuff that you have, the billions of dollars worth of sonar and radar equipment, you say it doesn't work, or are you lying about not seeing this stuff? So, and once again, it's a lot of very unusual stuff goes on down there. A lot of top secret stuff goes on down there. It's right in the middle of the Bermuda Triangle, and very few people know about that.
Unreal. Something else from your book I'd like to ask you about. Your best celebrity UFO sighting.
Has to go to William Shatner, because he's like kind of the character. To say,
he's Canadian. What can I say?
He claimed in a book that he wrote, or an interview, that he was riding his motorcycle through the Mojave Desert and got stranded. And it was 130 degrees out and so on and so forth when he said a UFO appeared over him and guided him to a gas station. And that's how he survived the ordeal. But later on, that was in his biography, but he was interviewed by the New York Times, and he said his quote was, "I told the truth that I lied." So, did it happen? Who knows? Whatever. But, it's just kind of funny. My second favorite one is that Mick Jagger was camping in 1968 with his girlfriend, Marianne Faithfull, and they saw a UFO. And the biggest mystery about that is I can't imagine Mick Jagger camping,
Exactly.
This doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Let me see. The best UFO story you found.
Well, it happens to have happened off of Gander back in 1956. There was this military airplane, a transport airplane that was actually carrying crews back from duty in Europe. They was going to land at Gander, refuel, and go down to Passatonix River in Maryland. A huge UFO came up right from the ocean and rode alongside this airplane for quite a while. Huge, 300 feet across, 60 feet thick. And what was interesting about this is that there were a lot of air crews, pilots and navigators who just happened to be on this transport plane. They came up to, the crew compartment and also looked out the window. So you had like about 20 airmen as witnesses
Expert
to this
witnesses. These guys are expert witnesses. They're just not witnesses.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And military pilots are the best, witnesses of UFOs because they've seen everything. They know what Venus looks like in the daytime and so on. When they see something unusual, they know it.
Wow. In your book, do you discuss any bad military ideas?
Well, there's a lot of bad military ideas, One of them was in 1958. Now, this is right after the Russians launched Sputnik. They actually had the first satellite, and we could see it. I can remember as a kid being out in our street and looking at this thing go over.
Yeah.
Well, the U.S. Air Force wanted to, improve the morale of the country, so they said they wanted to detonate a nuclear bomb on the moon and do it, on a day that, we could see it from Earth, okay? Carl Sagan, the very famous scientist, was someone who was actually lobbying for this.
You're kidding.
And And the Pentagon, to their wisdom, somehow, some way, the people in the Pentagon said, wouldn't it be easier if we just, landed a man on the moon? And that's what they wound up doing.
The question is, if they couldn't get a satellite into orbit, how in the name of heavens were they going to get an atomic bomb on the moon to blow it up to steal the thunder away from the Russians?
Believe me, they would have figured out a way. It would have cost billions of dollars, but there was no thought given to you would contaminate the moon. I mean, right now the footprints of the moon are going to last there a million years because there's no wind, there's no wave there's no reason that they would disperse. They would have contaminated the moon for eternity.
So are you telling me, Mac, that all the people who believe there are bases on the moon are wrong?
Yes, there's no bases on the moon. We would know about it, We
exactly.
would know about it.
Exactly. Like I was telling them, the amateur astronomers, alone would be spilling the beans.
Sure. Yeah. There's a lot of them. Sure.
Every author I talk to always has one favorite part of their book. And in your book, Mack Maloney's Haunted Universe, what is your favorite entry?
Well, there's it's an entry that actually came from the book I wrote called Beyond Area 51. There's a place in Russia that they call the M Triangle. It's in the Ural Mountains, and it's in a kind of isolated spot. And for years, the KGB, when the Soviet Union was still together, wouldn't let anyone in there who wasn't military or KGB. Finally, when things kind of, when they took the wall down and so on, the Russian government started letting journalists and scientists into this place because it had this myth about it. But it turns out that people who go to this place, like, for instance, the thing that gets me all the time is that the animals come right up to the people. The animals have no fear of people, and the fish have no fear of people. Fish come up to people and, wanting to be fed. People see UFOs there all the time, but they see lots of lights and orbs and so on. They see the stars dancing. They see like Bigfoot type creatures. And this is like about a 20 square mile area. But the strange thing is that when people go in there, it seems like they're changed. They go in there for 2 weeks on these expeditions, and when they come out, they seem to be like changed people. And this goes on and on. Just the stuff that happens within this place is very unusual, and no one really knows why. But the best story about it is, real quick, is that this guy who was drummed out of the Russian military for being unphysically fit went to bounced around, became a reporter. They let him into the M Triangle because he was a reporter. Now, this was not a really bright bulb guy by his own admission. Okay, and there happened to be a People magazine reporter there that week, and it followed this guy around. He wrote his story. He went back to Moscow. He had a sudden intelligence about astrophysics, and in less than a year, he was a cosmonaut. How does that happen? He says it happened because he went to the M Triangle. It's a fascinating place, and it's just unusual that it happens to be in Russia, and now the Russian security services keep an eye on it again, which is too bad. But it's a very strange place. Strange things happen there, and that's my favorite entry for the book, for sure.
Fascinating. So what's up next for you, Mac?
I'm not sure. Well, I'm writing a book called, I do my Wingman series. We're working on Wingman 19 right now. That's coming out next May. And then we're going to work on Wingman 20, which should be out about 6 months after that.
So tell me, are you still playing with your band Sky Club?
Yep, still playing with Sky Club. We have a second album coming out pretty soon. And it's all about UFOs and people I've met in the UFO community since I've been in the UFO community for the past 2 or 3 years or so.
With that, I've got about a minute, Mac. First of all, thanks very much for joining us. Always a great pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Rob.
Quickly, what is your opinion of Roswell?
I don't think anything happened at Roswell, and because when you look at it from the point of view of what the Air Force was doing at the time, which was launching a lot of secret balloons, we all know the story.
Moguls.
Okay, but all you have to do is look at the debris that was gathered, after it from Brazel's farm, and there's rope in there. Do you think a UFO would really have rope aboard?
Only if they're towing another UFO that ran out of gas.
Yeah, right.
Mack Maloney, thank you so much for joining us tonight, my friend. Always a great pleasure talking to you. And once again, congratulations to the World Series winner Boston Red Sox for a great series. And I look forward to the next time you and I meet here in the X-Zone, Mac. Take care of yourself.
Thank you, Rob. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Rob.
It's my great pleasure, buddy. And X-Zone, if you'd like to get a copy of Mack Maloney's new book, Mack Maloney's Haunted Universe, visit his website, mackmaloney.com. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as we continue here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My name is Rob McConnell. Don't go away.